favorite accomplishment? Gee, because what I wanted to do was be part of a championship, win a championship team. But I was just happy with what I was able to give to the NBA. I gave it my all, everything that I had. Didn't win a championship, but I can say that I gave my best. And I can say maybe my best wasn't good enough, but I enjoyed it.
Every so often, we get to interview or sit alongside somebody really impactful. That's exactly what today's podcast guest is all about. Hi, I'm your host, Yogi Roth. This is the Yogi Roth Show, where we try to seek and uncover humanity in sports around the globe. And in the offseason, we talk about other sports. We interview people in other sports outside of college football. Today's is with an absolute icon, first-team icon in my eyes, Elgin Baylor. And I had a chance to sit down with him at an event with Thuzio. If you're not familiar with Thuzio, they put on some of the best events in sports around the country. They bring icons together with moderators, and we talk in front of a live audience. That's exactly what today's conversation was. And to sit down with Elgin Baylor, for me, who I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I knew about Elgin Baylor, the GM in the front office with the Clippers, but I didn't know his story until I read his book, until I prepared for this opportunity to interview him. And when you learn about him, he was really before his time. I mean, as an athlete, he was a beast. Number one pick in the draft, all NBA team 10 times, 11-time NBA All-Star, in the Hall of Fame, number one pick. I mean, he's done everything you can imagine on the basketball floor. But to me, how he utilized sport for good, how he utilized sport via civil rights, how he utilized sport to make sure that just the right things happen so many times in his life, to me is my big takeaway. And when I learned about his story, this is a guy who almost had basketball taken away from him growing up in Washington, D.C. He saw a lot. He's been around a lot of racial tension. He's been around a lot of conversations around what the power of play can do. And because of basketball, he's impacted and inspired so many. And when you go back and you watch him, just watch him on YouTube. I mean, this guy was like Dr. J before Dr. J. He was a freak athlete. He was even going to college to play football. So for all of those of us who love this podcast because of college football, there's even a little bit of college football in our conversation. So I hope you enjoy this one with Elgin Baylor as I did. And while you're listening to it, I hope you're enjoying a cup of coffee, specifically Kona Red. They're a proud sponsor and presenting partner on my podcast here at the Yogi Roth Show. And if you're curious about them, go to KonaRed.com. They source some of the rarest, most sought-after coffee on planet Earth. And it comes from the mountains of Hawaii, where the soil is just magical. If you've ever been over there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, just Google Hawaii, and you'll be impressed by every image that you see. Now, that being said, I'm impressed by every element of their coffee that I drink, because they have so many, right? They got the regular coffee beans you can grind up. They've got cold brew that's epic, and it'll get your day kicked off. They even now have these cans that I love whenever I'm watching film, getting ready for a game or the season. And I've talked to some other people like Sam Darnold, who's been on this podcast. He loves having them in the New York Jets quarterback meeting room, and the guys can just pop one of the cans of coffee before practice. Even some players use it prior to games in other sports, including the NFL. And to me, it's one of the best products out there when we're talking about coffee. So check them out. If you want to buy it in person, like I like to do, go to Vons, Albertsons, Pavilions, Ralph's, Bristol Farms, and Sprouts, as well as, of course, going to KonaRed.com. And I love coffee because it's a catalyst to conversation. And as you sit down and listen to Elgin Baylor, one of the greats, hopefully with a cup of coffee, as you listen to it, think about some questions maybe you want to ask somebody else who is a fan of Elgin, or a fan of basketball, or a fan of sport and play, because I think this conversation will be a catalyst to future ones with you. Before I let you go, make sure we do a little bit of housekeeping. If you're looking for some sports stories, some inspiration, just go to YogiRoth.com and sign up for the How Great Is Ball newsletter. I'm trying to do that more consistent now, every other week, trying to kick that out, having some fun with that, and hopefully you can add some tools to your toolbox from that. If you're looking for a little swag, go to YogiRoth.com as well. We got a new t-shirt, which I'm pumped about. It's got the phrase, "Be where your feet are" on it. And I partner with Another Best Day, an organization that I love everything about, to create that t-shirt. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it and rock it in the summer and just get present before college football really gets crazy. Or if you need to calm down during college football like me, get present every so often and just reconnect to where you're at. maybe that T-shirt will serve as a reminder as well. And I hope all is well with you. My life is rolling. Just got married, on my way to a little summer vacation. And, of course, college football is right around the corner. So as the NBA Finals finish up here, I hope you sit back and listen to one of the greats, Elgin Baylor. An absolute honor and a gift to be able to sit down and ask him a few questions. Enjoy.
Go ahead, man.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you all for coming. And, of course, Elgin, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Heck yeah. Not sure how much all of you know about his story, but I'm a guy who's been around sports my whole life, football, basketball, you name it. And this book is easily one of the top 5 books I've ever read. Your story is an absolute honor to be able to share an element of that tonight. And we're truly not only around a legend as a basketball player, as an athlete, but as a human. I mean, the things that Elgin has witnessed and accomplished in his career is phenomenal. So we're going to only tap into 30 minutes of it, but I highly recommend to tap into the couple hours that you'll just get engrossed in this book, and you'll fall in love with every element of it. So to begin, what I'd love to know first, because you were Showtime 1.0. You know, the Lakers, it started in Minnesota with all the 10,000 lakes, and then you were part of it when it came to L.A. And all of us here, of course, admire the Lakers and probably imagine us playing at the Forum or at Staples or wherever may they be. So what was it like when basketball went from the back page to the front page, as you said in your book, in this town?
Well, if you live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, it snowed every night. Every day you wake up. And the temperature would be like 29 degrees. And what happened, we played during the season. We played, I think, after 3 or 4 games. And then, for some reason, we decided to play during the summer exhibition games out in California. So we went to Bakersfield. We played in Bakersfield, California. And so we went there. You know, we had winter clothes and didn't know. It was 101 degrees there in Bakersfield. And I said, boy, but wouldn't it be great if they had a team out here, because Minneapolis, I love Minneapolis. The people were great and things, but that cold weather couldn't stand. So we played 3 or 4 exhibition games out there. Then we came back to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And one day later, the next thing I know, the owner was calling and having a meeting and stuff. They were moving the team out here to California, which was amazing. I didn't want to start and rejoice and all that stuff and that, but it was amazing. Then we moved out there to California, and that's how it all started, from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I love it. Well, the way that it all started for you, it almost didn't start. You talk about in the book about how your mom almost had an abortion and made the decision to have you, and look at what's happened with you.
This is a story my mother told me, and we would sit down and talk a lot about life and things. And she told me that when she was pregnant with me, that we had other kids and things, and she wanted have an abortion. She didn't think that we could or maybe afford more kids. And she said when she went to church, a lady talked to her, and she didn't know her, never met her, and said, you should keep that kid. So she's, what? She's asking, She said, well, you shouldn't get rid of that kid. And she, later on, she told me she was going to have an abortion. And, she had me. Thank God. For me.
Thank God indeed.
You're right.
So you were born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Where you also got the nickname Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that nickname come from?
I have no idea until today. I have no idea how I got the name Rabbit. I don't know. I was pretty quick and I could jump.
Well,
I don't know.
I asked that story.
I don't know how I got it.
There's an amazing story in your book where you and your sister Columbia are walking through the streets of D.C. And as kids do sometimes, they get separated. And all of a sudden, someone comes up to you and they say, hey, come on in the car with me. We're going to help you find your sister. And as you're about to get in the car, you feel as though something isn't right here. And you bust out of the car and you run and you're getting chased and chased and chased. And all of a sudden, you eventually lose the men that were trying to do something clearly unfortunate with you if they took in your car. Do you recall that story?
Yeah, I recall that story. Washington, D.C. at the time, it was a very segregated city. And so happened, we were going to the circus, my sister and I think I was about 8 or 9 years old. And so happened, I call myself being funny, to hide away from my sister. And then I couldn't find her afterwards. And so happened a car drives up and there's three, white people, men in the car. And they asked me about, where you going? So I said, I don't know, I'm trying to find my sisters. And they said, well, gee, we'll help you find your sisters. I had no idea. I was like 9 years old. And finally, so happened, thank God, we was driving, I saw my sister, and I just jumped out of the car.
Amazing. I think all of us, whatever our sport of choice is, we remember when we fell in love with it. What I love about you is that the first time you played basketball, you crawled under a fence and you played with a tennis ball late at night. Mm-hmm. What about falling in love with that game on that asphalt with the tennis ball made you commit your life to the craft of basketball?
Well, think about it. We wanted to do something to have fun, stay out of trouble, and we couldn't afford a basketball, so we had a tennis ball. And so we'd go out there and we'd play by the street lights, lights we had, and we'd play out there. And so from there, I enjoyed it. Thought maybe one day we'd be able to afford, a basketball. And so we did. So now, we'd go there and play and have fun.
You talked about Washington, D.C. and it being a segregated community. There's a story in your book that will cut everyone deep to the core about when a police officer shows up at your house and they're looking for your sister. I'd love if you could share that story with the group and your memory from they walked in and you to watch your father and your sister in an abusive situation for the first time.
Well, what happened, there was a public park not too far, probably a couple hundred yards from where we lived. And the park was segregated, like everything was in Washington, D.C. And so happened, my sister and I, which is a few years older, we were just walking through the park. And so happened, a couple was coming by, and was white girl and the man, and so she bumped they bumped into each other, and so the girl did something and said something, and she ended up smacking my sister. And my sister was, she was like Mike Tyson, boy, I tell you what. She was tough, really, and she just boom, 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 the girl. And so happened after we got home, then the police come by our house, and there they want to get my sister, question my sister, and take her into the police station, And so at that time, my mother was just coming home from work, and she just went off crazy. I mean, she was just after the police and everything else. And then afterwards, they just didn't want to deal with it, and so they just dropped it, forgot about it.
I love it. So you fall in love with this game via a tennis ball, and you start to play and play and play. When did you know that you were a talented player in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I don't think you think about it. You didn't know. You just enjoy what you're doing. And I don't know if you look and sit there and look at the results you get when you play and thinking, oh, gee, I could play at that level, do that. I don't know. It's just that when I went out and played, I just want to have fun, enjoy myself. I didn't think about the glory or anything like that. And until, when I got in junior high school, I played and enjoyed there. Then when you got to high school, then they started evaluating players and how they look and everything, writing great things about them. And that's when I got to the point where I, really enjoyed and worked hard to try to even get better.
It's interesting, when you prepare to these events, your first search usually takes you to Wikipedia, somewhere on the internet. And it says with you that you had to drop out of high school. And it was instantly, for me, that was a point of I'm really interested in what's going to happen here. And her name goes by Barbara Arnold. You didn't drop out of high school because you didn't like going to class. You dropped out of high school because of something that a lot of us probably couldn't even imagine. I'm curious if you can share that moment in your life and what happened there.
Maybe I shouldn't talk about that. So happened was a young lady that someone introduced to the Met. So happened, at the time, I think I was 16 or 17 years old, probably too old for that, and had sex, I guess. At least I thought it did. and next thing I know, a couple of months later, she's, calling about, supporting the kid. She was having a kid, which was wrong, Come to find out, she was pregnant several months before I met her.
Yeah, I mean, so basically what happens is you meet a girl, his fame is growing in D.C. and is beautifully told in the book. And you guys connect, and she tells you that you're going to be the father of a child that isn't your child. And you drop out of high school to support her and that family.
Yes, think of it, because my dad said, best thing to do, okay, fine. He didn't know either. He says, think about it, you have to go on and, take care of it. If it is, you have to take care of her. See, which we didn't know, and come to find out, I was not the father of the kid.
Right. And then fortunately, you get to go back to high school. Colleges find out about you, and you make your way out to Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like on the way out to Idaho from D.C.?
Idaho was a great city. The people were just great. Nice, clean, city. And so happened a friend of mine called Warren Williams, they call him WW, he played football. And so happened when he went back just before the season, school started, the coach had asked him about other players, football players. And so happened for some reason Warren told him that about me. Hell, I didn't want to play football. You can get hurt. Playing football is crazy. He didn't know I played basketball. So anyway, I went there on a scholarship there. And so when I got there and we, practiced and everything else, and the coach watched me play, and we were in the gym just playing pickup games. And he was watching me, and then he said, hey, forget about football. You're playing basketball, and that's how it started. I didn't want to play football anyway. You can get hurt playing football.
Yeah, well said. I agree. So he becomes the equipment manager for the football team, and you're on the basketball team, and then they end the idea of football, basketball, that school, and you got to go find another place. So you move to Seattle. What I love about this is when you're playing in Seattle at Seattle University, you go and meet somebody who will end up becoming a lifelong friend of yours, Mr. Bill Russell, prior to a game when you had to sit out for a year. When you met him for the first time, you write in your book that he knew you as Rabbit. Were you surprised that your fame as a player went to a guy like Bill Russell? There's no internet back then.
No, I was surprised he ever paid any attention to me because Bill, it's like all the magazines, everything is writing about the San Francisco team because they were winning national titles. So, I was, surprised.
When you then start to play college basketball for Seattle, you take your team to the national championship and you're playing Kentucky. You write in your book how you felt as though it was 18,997 versus 3 black athletes when you played Kentucky, the way the game was being called. It seemed as though in your life, adversity would show up and you'd showed up even more. Did you feel like you liked it when it got harder sometimes for you as a performer?
No, I sort of enjoy it because I've only got overcome it. We'd hang out, being arrogant, cocky, being young, stupid. We'll show them, And when we played Kentucky, it was just the worst officiating that I've ever seen in my life, because I remember earlier one play I was going after basketball and, got the ball in bounds. An official called a bad call. And I just said to the official, and this was early in the first quarter, the beginning of the game. And I told him, I said, listen, you missed it. A guy fouled me. And so when he told me, shut up, boy, I knew I had a problem.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. So you make your way into the NBA, become the #1 draft pick, and you go to the Lakers. You're on your way to Minneapolis. When you get there, you sign for, I believe, $20,000? $25,000. Mm-hmm. When you get into the NBA, when did you feel as though, man, I got a real place in this league. I can play this game, and I'm going to be the face of this franchise? Because you literally went from being out of high school to out of Idaho to now you're the #1 draft pick in only a matter of a couple years.
I never thought about that. The only thing I thought about is playing and enjoying myself and trying to be the best I could be. I never thought about the salaries or anything, of that nature until I, talked to a few other players, particularly Bill Russell, as you mentioned, the money that he was making. And I was saying, well, gee, it's great, And Minnesota was great. The people were wonderful. And, I enjoyed the city, but I didn't enjoy the cold weather. It would get 29, 30 degrees, there's 0. Black people don't stand that kind of temperature there. You must know that.
I want to take you to, I believe it was your second year in the NBA. and you go to play a game in Charleston, West Virginia. And now in athletics, a lot is being made of athletes and their voices. You decided to use yours that night because they wouldn't allow African Americans in a certain hotel. And you decided that you weren't going to play in the game. That, to me, must have been, reading it, it was extremely courageous. I'm curious for you, as you look back on that, what do you remember about that night and that decision in the locker room to say, no, I'm not even going to play tonight?
What I remembered was the mail I got, hatred mail from people, the racism, the names they called and said, but I don't even want to repeat all the stuff that they said, about playing the game. But, the coach, was at least, I thought he was a liberal guy. And so I told him that I'm not going to play. It started off because the place to stay there, it was Teresa's Motel. When I said Teresa's Motel, I'm thinking, boy, we're going to have a problem from the beginning. And so happened, the hotel we wanted to stay in was another hotel, and we couldn't stay in the hotel. And so happened, I got the guys together and said, listen, hey, what's going on? I was the captain of the team. And I said, if we don't stay together, I'm not going to be part of it. And I told the coach that, and he's, and so happened, I told him I wasn't going to play. And so I didn't. I didn't play. We lost. And the media the next day, just blasted me. It was unreal. But, I thought, it was the right thing to do.
It seemed as though, the lore of you was just catching on all over the NBA and all around the country. So much so that you write about this amazing moment where you meet Wilt Chamberlain. And you guys play, not in a gym, but you play in the park. He comes up from Philly. You play in the summer in D.C. And there are 3,000 people at this game on the playground. What do you recall about that day? And did you take a moment ever and look out and be like, what? A lot of people here just to watch both of us kind of go back and forth.
No, I never really thought about it. To me, it was just fun. The only thing I thought about was Wilt complained about every play. Somebody fouled him. Every time he missed a free throw, and he couldn't make free throws to save his life. But, it's fun. We had fun together, playing during the summer, And it was great. I, really enjoyed it. The relationship was good because some other NBA players would come down and we'd play in the league and, have a tournament and just have fun.
Fun.
Fun
is probably the word you think when you get to the NBA Finals. For most of us, you go and you play these epic series against the Celtics. When you look back on those battles, do you think of fun? Do you think of heartbreak? What are some of the thoughts that you have around that rivalry?
Well, I thought that we didn't win the championship. That's number one.
Yeah.
But I, just thought that, hey, with everyone that we gave the best, the best we could. You think about it, Boston had a terrific team. And see, when you have a center like Bill Russell, it just makes you an awesome team. That guy is just unbelievable. Couldn't make free throws, but everything else, the intangible things he does, block shots and picks and all that thing. And, he wanted to beat the Celtics, but, we never did. We've gone, I don't know how many finals we went against him. But it was a pleasure, to play against him. That no one thought that we would go that far, with our team.
Speaking of going far, I'm curious if you ever thought that you would find yourself being drafted in the military while you're being an NBA basketball player, far away from where your home was as you moved out to Los Angeles.
Well, I never thought I would be drafted because the fact is I was married and had a kid. And the people that were married and had families, they were not being drafted. And I was wondering why, I was drafted. In fact, I talked to owner of the team, and he talked to somebody, the colonel, somebody in the Army, and they said, I shouldn't. So I ended up missing, a lot of games, almost half the season, couldn't play, because simple reason, they didn't know I was going to play or not. And they also didn't have a uniform to fit me. They had made uniforms during the summer, and they didn't know whether I was going to play or not. So I didn't even have a uniform.
All of a sudden, as you're playing in the NBA, the ABA is formed. And I thought it was pretty interesting. You're making $100,000 at the time, and you get offered $600,000 to go play in the ABA. Why'd you say no?
Well, because I enjoyed the NBA. It was a league that has proven himself. It's not a league because they started before the other group, and they've folded. But the league has been good to me. I appreciated the relationship and thing I had, with my teammates and thing. And I figure if I'm going to be, successful or remembered for what, it's not going to be in the ABA. It's going to be in the NBA.
Speaking of being remembered, you were playing at such a high level, all-star games, finals. Mm-hmm. No athlete ever expects it to end. And all of a sudden, your knee gives out one night. You describe it as an explosion in your knee. Mm-hmm. Take us through what an athlete who's at the pinnacle of their profession thinks when 1 second, literally, you're the best player on the floor, and the next, you're struggling just to walk off the floor.
I don't know. It's very hard to talk about it. I mean, I was just running down the floor, and just all of a sudden my knee just went out. I had no idea what it was, what caused it. And until this day, I don't think the doctors either. They didn't know, and it was very difficult because they did surgery and things, but it wasn't 100%, and I still had a difficult time playing, but still I was good enough, had enough talent to be, the all-star team and make the all-time team and play, and still have a, good year as far as playing, scoring and thing. But it was very difficult playing.
He tells this great story in his book about, your knee gives out, and then you do the rehab, and you're cleared to play. But you're hesitant when you're playing, and the doctor calls you into his office, and he says, your knee is perfect. I did the surgery. It's all mental. Get over it. How did you deal with somebody saying that to you, as competitive as you are? And how did you get over it and become one of the top players again?
It was Dr. Curlin. Was a great, doctor, orthopedic doctor, and he covered all the sports. I mean, people would go to him. He's the number one guy to go to. And I was really having problems, and the thing about it, he didn't know. I mean, like, he's not in my knee. He's just telling me something, that I should feel a certain way. And I really had a difficult time, with playing and things like that, And so he called me in his office one day and told me, he said, I've been watching you and you're not really going all out. And I said, I don't know what you mean all out. He said, you're favoring your knee. So I said, certainly I'm favoring my knee. You did surgery on my knee. I don't know if you did a good job or not. I was just kidding with him, And so he said, just go out there and play and forget about it. And so I did that, and so happened I was able to make the all-star team and everything after that. But it was very difficult because once you've had an injury, like a serious injury, it's a mental thing. You're thinking, boy, is that going to happen again? You just worry about that.
You ever go back and watch yourself online, old clips of yourself playing?
Let me see. No, I've had watched some of them, but I don't go back a lot because I have a lot at home, clips of me playing things, but I haven't watched it a lot.
What do you think when you watch yourself play and then watch NBA playoffs on television? Do you think about what it would be like now or what guys would be like then?
What? Looking at it, think about it, I am not being bragging or anything, but I get amazed at some of the things I did, like some of the shots I made. I don't know how the hell I did it, what the moves I made, and I don't know about it until I look at the film. I say, well, gee, I guess I'm better than I thought, So it was fun.
Is there something around some of the best performers, whether it's Bill Russell, Jerry West, some of the guys you played with, been around, Wilt, that they look at themselves and they just say, that's just my game. That's just what I do. Or are some of them impressed with what they do when they go back and watch it in your experience?
Well, it's just not that, it's simple. You make preparations, before, you play. And everybody you play, and generally you have films of the players. Generally, supposed to have films all the time. And you play players in the league. When I came to the league, you play them a lot. You play them 6-8 times. So you get a feel of what players can do, what they cannot do, and you know the do's and don'ts, playing. And they're doing the same thing with you. So when you go play, you don't do the things you normally do, like some guys do. They repeat the same thing, and they make it easier for them to guard. And what you have to do is work on new movements, new drills, and stuff like that to give them a new look, to be different when you go out there.
And speaking of being different, it's such a different era now than when you played. Now athletes, as we all know, they have a voice, right? Sometimes it's on Twitter or it's on some sort of social media. Your voice was through your actions, right? You didn't play that night in Charleston, West Virginia. You led the group where you weren't going to play in an all-star game when you're going up against the NBA union and the president of the NBA. When you look at what athletes are doing now with their voice, how important is it in your eyes for them to speak with their actions or speak with their voice in a unique time in society right now?
Well, no, I haven't followed that much, but I think they should speak with their voice because think about it, the athletes, they control the show. They don't go out there and produce or play anything like that. They have the leverage to do all of this. So I just think that they should use their voice and, what they need to do. And a lot of things have improved, like insurance, everything else in the league for injuries and stuff like that. So it's much better than it's been. It's not even close.
Curious for you, there's so many great stories in this book that go all the way back to when you were a kid and what you called Rat City, which was D.C., all the way up until you get your statue outside of Staples Center. Why did you wait this long to write the book? And did you feel as though you held a lot of things in from your life? Because I would imagine a lot of people don't know these stories that are in those pages.
No. Well, I've been asked, the whole time, for years, I've been asked somebody, write a book. And I said, listen, if I write a book, is this mic on? No, to be totally honest, there's some things that I would write, if I'm going to be totally honest, about some players and people that, don't want to be revealed. I didn't want to be totally honest, so I just don't say anything about it. It would hurt feelings, relationships and stuff like that. And so I didn't. But then eventually I decided, okay, this thing to do, and my wife and thing, 100% behind me, and, she's going to direct me. She's the boss, and to do it. So I decided to do it.
I love that. One of my favorite things that you write in your book is how it ends. And you talk about if there's one piece of advice you can give to people is to love as hard as you can. Do you feel as though you understood love for people because of the love that you had for the game that began with a tennis ball?
Well, yeah, but think about it. You got to have love for your family first. That's number one. Your wife and family is number one. And the other thing you have to, like you say, like you can have all the love you want, but you don't have the ability, forget it. And a lot of guys love, certain things, but they don't have the ability, so that's why they don't make it.
We're going to open up to questions in a second, but I want to end with this question for you. Everybody in this audience is a high performer. They do great in whatever their craft that they've chosen to do is. You've dealt with a lot of different obstacles, and it is as though you just didn't flinch, whether it was racism, whether it was someone lying to you, whether it was an injury, whether it was a professional career. What advice would you give to people that are trying to be the best in their craft when things come in their way that isn't easy, when things don't necessarily look as though they're going to be the picture-perfect life that a lot of us hope that we have?
I couldn't answer that question unless I know the situation they're in. It'd be, impossible to answer that question unless I know what the situation is.
What would you say to a young boy who is 9 years old, who is about to fall in love with the game of basketball?
What would I say? It's very difficult because I think their priority is one day they hope to be a professional, player. But 9 years old is very difficult. Think about it. At that age, they're not even coordinated, some of them, at 9 years old. So it'd be, very difficult. They should do something that they enjoyed, and then I think the family can see that if they have the ability, that they might, play professionally, but first of all, think about going to college. Getting a degree. At least they get a job. They make a living. But with the basketball, it's difficult. You got to be sort of special to have that ability to do that.
Well, you clearly were. And before we go, I'd love to ask you how you feel about the simple word limits, because you've been pushing through anybody setting limits on you your entire life. So when you hear that phrase, I'm going to put limits on you right now, what would you say?
The what now? Question again?
When you hear the word limits, how do you feel about that word?
Limits?
Yeah.
I never thought about that. I mean, really, like you say limits, I guess, when you say limits, you got to be clarified more. I don't know what you're talking about, limits in sports, basketball, or what, when you say limits.
I think it's just amazing that at every moment of your life, you've persevered. When people said, nope, you can't do this, you said, no, I'm going to compete through that, through your basketball career and through your life. And to me, that was one of the greatest takeaways that I had from your book.
No, yeah, when you think that, like, hey, it's something you love, you enjoy doing it, you give it your best shot, and you stick with it, It's like you're not going to always be successful, and especially if you're going to just give up, but you have to have confidence in yourself, and number one, you have to have the ability to do it, and then you have to give it your best shot.
Love it. Well, thank you for giving us the best tonight. I know we got a couple questions. Let's give Elgin a round of applause.